Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare is regarded as one of the greatest FPS campaigns of all time. Certainly it's one of the greatest in the franchise. It's a game that I cherish very fondly, and it's a campaign I have personal memories with that mean a lot. So when I booted up Modern Warfare to play through it again, I expected to have a good time. I expected to reminisce, and to appreciate the craftsmanship of the game as I traveled down memory lane. What I wasn't expecting was to be completely captivated by the game, to the point where I'd think about the campaign while working out or doing other things. What I wasn't expecting was to finish a mission and be on the edge of my seat for what was coming next. This is a game I've played multiple times, and the fact that it's so darn gripping, even on multiple playthroughs, even over multiple years, is pretty astonishing. And I think this is a testament to just how perfectly Modern Warfare is crafted. I want to dig into Modern Warfare and discover just what makes this game so exciting and compelling. Although there are a multitude of reasons you could point out, I think there are two in particular that are Modern Warfare's special sauce. That's the pacing and the use of contrast. With that, let's dive in. Modern Warfare starts with a debrief screen where one of the SAS operators, Gaz, gives us a summary of the situation. In short, things aren't good. The world is on the brink of falling apart. Russia's at civil war, with government loyalists against ultranationalist rebels, and there are thousands of nukes at stake.
Good news first, the world's in great shape. We've got a civil war in Russia, government loyalists against ultranationalist rebels, and 15,000 nukes at stake.
Just another day at the office.
Already, we see the personality of the SAS team shine through. Gaz and Captain Price are characterized by an unshakable, stubborn bravery, paired with a wry sarcasm, both of which will serve them soon. Meanwhile, the Middle East is also on the brink of conflict, with a man named Al-Asad gunning for top spot. That's not great news either. And perhaps the worst news of all follows. SAS has a new recruit, one Soap McTavish. This is where we step in, through the shoes of Soap. In a classified warehouse, he goes through a training regimen, and we as the player get acclimated to the controls.
Knife the watermelon. Nice! Your fruit killing skills are remarkable.
Next, Soap meets with Captain Price. Price isn't exactly nice to him, showing his trademark wry, biting speech.
Right. What the hell kind of name is Soap, eh? How'd a muppet like you pass selection?
Soap is in the classic new recruit situation where he's the lowest dog on the food chain, and he's certainly treated like it. These are hard men who like a trial by fire more than anything else. Respect isn't given, but it's earned. He runs through the training course, and we put our newly acquired skills to the test. A really cool part of this training sequence is that the game will suggest what difficulty to play on based on your time. This is great because it helps players decide what difficulty is right for them, and it's something I wish I saw more games do. However, it's also very motivating to run through the training course again and again. The first time through, I completely botched it, and ended up getting suggested the recruit difficulty, which is the lowest one.
Pretty good, Soap, but I've seen better. Climb up the ladder if you want another go.
I took this as a personal slight, and I made it my mission to get at least recommended the third difficulty hardened. So I ran the course until I got my goal.
That was an improvement, but it's not hard to improve on garbage. Try it again.
I suspect I'm not the only person who's done this, so I think this training exercise and this difficulty suggestion is a great way of getting the player into the shoes of a special operator, training over and over again until achieving a satisfactory result. With training complete, Soap embarks on his first operation. They are to retrieve a package from a cargo ship, courtesy of intel from a Russian informant. They head to the Bering Strait. The waters are rough, dangerous looking even. Captain Price remains unfazed, smoking a cigar casually amidst the storm. This image, I think, sums up Captain Price's personality perfectly. Modern Warfare isn't as focused on character building as some other games, but still moments like these throughout the game leave you with a very clear understanding of who the characters are, especially Price. They rappel onto the ship and the operation begins. One of my favorite details is that the training room from earlier is a replica of the cargo ship's layout. You weren't just training, you were training specifically for this op, and it demonstrates how much work and perfectionism go into SAS's operations. They make their way through the ship, taking out threats along the way. It's incredibly immersive as you move with the SAS. Their movements are a well-oiled machine, and you're just one cog within it. They retrieve the shipping manifest they were after, but bad news follows. The ship is capsizing. They make a desperate exit as the ship floods, and you're left disoriented, walking through hallways with the walls tilting this way and that. They make it back to the helicopter with not a moment to spare, as Soap nearly falls off the back. Price grabs him and hauls him back into the ship. This mission is expertly paced. It starts slowly, creeping through corridors and sneakily taking out enemies, and it steadily builds to open combat before the final conclusion. Stellar mission pacing will be a theme throughout the game, and so will the pacing between missions, but I'll get more into that as we go along. We are transported halfway across the world into the shoes of Al-Fulani. The president is not in a good situation. He's handcuffed and unceremoniously dumped into the back of a vehicle, with a little love tap to send him on his way. The president gets a scowl by the man in the passenger seat. This is Viktor Zakayev, who will become important later in the story. The ride is devoid of conversation. Over loudspeakers, the president hears Al-Asad giving a speech about delivering the nation to its former glory. If you recall from earlier, Al-Asad is the number 2 man, gunning for the top spot. We're playing as the president who is held prisoner. The calculus does not look good here. This car ride is long, almost excessively so. It lasts multiple minutes. One reason for this is that the drive serves as the opening credits scroll. However, the length also builds suspense. The player is left to simmer and imagine the fate in store, and as Al-Asad's speech continues, you dread what lay at the end of this ride. The slow pacing here also works well because it's in stark contrast to the ending of the prior mission. The player just finished a high-intensity escape from a carrier ship. Following that up with a slow car ride is an abrupt halting of that speed, and it makes the slowness and dread even more pronounced. This is a great example of what I mean about the game using contrast and pacing very effectively. The president reaches the end of the road. He's dragged into a courtyard with Al-Asad, who is finishing his speech. The dread continues to build. A one-armed man in the background hands Al-Asad a pistol. This body language is telling. Al-Asad isn't the one in charge. He's being given power by the shadowy individual who is really pulling the strings. This is a great little piece of visual storytelling. Al-Asad doesn't waste any time. He pulls the trigger. Gaz earlier described a world on the brink of conflict. This execution here is the ignition. The Americans plan movements on this Al-Asad. Meanwhile, the SAS has even more pressing matters. Nikolai, the ultra-nationalist informant from the cargo ship op, is going to be executed. Price and his men have to bail him out. This mission has a similar pacing to the first. It starts slowly with stealth before developing into open combat. This pattern gives each mission a nice feeling of progression in of itself. It's worth noting that the build-up is faster, and the combat is of a larger scale, with the Russian loyalists joining your side against the contingency of ultranationalists. This pacing matches the building stakes of the story. There are also a couple of little details I enjoy here. For instance, the president's execution can be seen on the news within one of the houses. Details like this help build immersion and make the world feel more cohesive. Soap and his allies infiltrate a house with a cool night vision segment, and they capture Nikolai. He asks if the Americans have begun their invasion to capture Al-Asad yet. He says they're about to make a big mistake.
The Americans already attacked Al-Asad!
No, their invasion begins in a few hours. Why?
The Americans are making mistake. They will never take Al-Asad alive!
This moment builds tension significantly, and it has ripple effects on the next mission. In the next mission, the player switches perspective again, this time into the shoes of Sergeant Paul Jackson of the US Marines 1st Force Recon Company. That upcoming US invasion, well, it's here. There is an absolute swarm of helicopters joining Jackson's. The US forces feel overwhelming. You're one drop in an absolute tsunami that is about to hit its enemies. The mission is ambitious and straightforward. Al-Asad is thought to be in one of the buildings. The US forces are about to get him, and end Al-Asad's reign quickly. Jackson descends to the battlefield. The sky is crisp and blue, and the environment is bright. I bring these up for contrast later. Jackson clears the buildings methodically with his fellow Marines. That feeling of being part of a tsunami continues. However, this feeling of power brings with it a sense of dread. Nikolai said that the Americans were making a huge mistake. With how dominating the US forces feel, how could this be a mistake? What exactly are we about to walk into? This unease is heightened when the Marines reach the broadcast station where Al-Asad was thought to be broadcasting live. It turns out that was just a recording playing on a loop. The Americans fell for the ruse, hook, line, and sinker. There isn't an immediate fallout, but it creates this feeling that you're not entirely in control here. The Marines receive new mission orders, so they head out. On the next mission debrief, a newscaster summarizes the battle. The US forces faced an entire day of heavy fighting. Already, this is a departure from the simple smash and grab plan to get Al-Asad to end this thing in a matter of hours. The next mission's objective also reflects this deterioration. There is a tank stuck, callsign Warpig. Jackson and his fellow Marines are to secure it. Rescuing a tank from a ditch is a far cry from a prior mission's ambition. The mission begins under a dark, foreboding sky, filled with smoke and fire from the conflict. The buildings have crumbled, mortared out. Lastly, the Marines are in the disadvantaged position, with their enemies freely firing on them from above. Jackson has to fight tooth and nail to secure the building. This starkly contrasts with the prior mission's crisp blue sky and overall clean feeling. Once more, the contrasting of elements is used to great effect to communicate a sense of disorder. Despite the chaos, the Marines manage to secure the tank. It's a small victory in this lengthening conflict. Perspective once again switches to Price's team. They're escorting Nikolai to a safe house, but their chopper is downed by an incoming missile. Soap awakens in the wreckage of the chopper. Their enemies are converging, and they need to get Nikolai out. The mission, aptly titled Hunted, sees the SAS make their escape while helicopters scour overhead. Enemies encroach and dogs hound them. The SAS in the prior missions have been depicted as always in control of the situation, so seeing them on the back foot feels strange. Their misfortune also matches the deterioration of the situation in the Middle East. Things in general are getting worse. Pacing again is used to great effect to communicate a growing sense of unease. Air support arrives to help them out. The next mission transfers to the AC-130's perspective. The player takes control of the gunship and is tasked with protecting the SAS as they escort Nikolai out. The player views the world below through the detached blacks and whites of thermal vision. Enemies are reduced to white ants, easily stomped on by the AC-130's array of weaponry. It's actually a bit disconcerting how removed you are from the conflict as enemies fall from your fingertips. I think this effect works so well because of one of my favorite words in this video, contrast. The prior mission saw both the SAS and the Marines in hard situations, fighting tooth and nail for every inch of ground. You felt the struggle and the chaos of those situations, up close and personal. This abrupt change to a ship that's eerily quiet with nary a sound except the AC-130's own guns firing is like a cold bucket of water being splashed on your face. It's a shock to the system.
Yeah, direct hit's right there. Tracking. Kaboom.
Although I wouldn't classify this game as some deep commentary on war, and that type of analysis is not really where I want to go with this video, this mission nonetheless is a powerful depiction of modern war. It makes you reflect on just how far technology has come, for good or ill. There's a reason this mission is so iconic. Aside from this detachment, the mission is incredibly immersive, in large part due to the chatter between the operators. There are small details which add to the authenticity. For instance, you're given explicit orders not to target the church.
Personnel approaching from the church. Request permission to engage.
Copy. You are cleared to engage the moving vehicle and any personnel around you see.
Affirmative. Crew, you are cleared to engage, but do not fire on the church.
Hot damn!
I could be wrong on the reason why here, but I'm pretty sure it's against the rules of war to target religious institutions, so the operators are avoiding it to avoid committing a war crime. Feel free to correct me if that's wrong in the comments. The SAS soldiers manage to exfil on a helicopter. The mission is saved. Perspective switches back to Sergeant Paul Jackson of the Marines. With the tank secured and repaired, the Marines push towards the capital with the new location that Al-Asad is thought to be hiding. There's a bit of uncertainty this time with the mission. Intel was wrong last time, and it's definitely possible that it's wrong again. Nonetheless, the Marines push on. With the power of the Abrams tank at your side, the odds once again fall back in the player's favor. You were prey for a little while, but now you're once again the predator. Just like the last mission with the SAS. The Marines continue their push into the next mission. Al-Asad is thought to be in the palace and the Marines are closing in on him. However, there is an additional piece of disconcerting intel. Al-Asad may have a Russian warhead. Speed is especially critical. The player takes the shoes of Sergeant Paul Jackson once more. He's in the seat of a chopper wielding a Mark 19 grenade launcher. He's tasked with taking out any ground troops that bother the helicopters, and with the launcher it's an easy task. Once more, there's a feeling of superior power over your enemies. Yet, there is still an undercurrent of unease, and that is conveyed largely by color. Everything has an orange hazy tint, giving off signals of warning. Jackson disengages and fights through ground troops before they're given the order to fall back. SEAL Team 6 has located the suspected nuclear device, and while nobody wants to be around that, a wrinkle emerges. Cobra pilot is shot down, and Jackson is given the order to pull her out. Nobody is getting left behind here. This mission is intense story-wise, but it's also intense gameplay-wise. Jackson has a 90-second time limit, and he has to fight through hordes of bad guys to reach the pilot. What I also like about this mission is Jackson's perspective. He's not a main actor in this part of the story. He's not a part of SEAL Team 6 or the Nuclear Emergency Support Team. All of these events he's hearing about secondhand as they try to escape the city. It conveys a sense of powerlessness that's quite befitting, and that makes the upcoming tragedy more resonant. They fail to stop the nuke. The sky behind Jackson implodes, creating the trademark mushroom cloud as a sweeping fire sends Jackson's helicopter down. The mission abruptly ends. As the next level loads in, a clamor of news correspondents relay their shock, and it's effective at communicating the confusion and horror from the event.
A nuclear explosion in his own country. Al-Asad was among the victims of what may have been
Names scroll down the screen, listing all the servicemen and women who are MIA. Sergeant Paul Jackson is among them. However, we come to learn that the sergeant is actually alive. We take his perspective once more in the crashed helicopter. When he comes to, there's a moment of hope. Jackson is one of our heroes after all. Of course it makes sense that he would survive. We can't see anything from the helicopter. That hope abruptly dissipates when Jackson crawls out and we witness the absolute catastrophe. It's an apocalyptic vision of all senses of the word. The sky's ash, soot, and darkness. And in the middle of the destruction, the mushroom cloud looms. Jackson dies, surrounded by the bodies of his fellow countrymen. This mission is a shock to the system. So far, the game has been pretty gung-ho, and it felt like the Marines would stop the threat in the nick of time. Instead, they failed, and were left with the ashes. Tension is palpable, because we know the fallout will extend well past the conflict with Al-Asad. Speaking of apocalyptic visions, this is a perfect time to plug my book. Along with doing YouTube, I'm a science fiction writer. My latest novel just won first place at a book festival for general fiction, and it's inspired me to really make a go at getting the book to the next level. One of the biggest things to help me with that is the user reviews. They are crucial for Amazon to recommend your book to others, and it starts a snowball effect. With that, I have a goal of hitting 30 reviews, and I'd love your help with that mission. Once I hit 30, I plan on releasing a celebration video covering a game that my viewers, you all, choose. If you want to help me out, or would just love to pick a video for me to cover, please consider picking up the book and dropping a review. I just need 18 more reviews to hit my goal. Either way, thanks for watching. I really appreciate your support. With Jackson KIA, perspective switches back to Soap and the SAS. Nikolai, our informant, is confident that Al-Asad wouldn't sacrifice himself. He wasn't in the palace, and Nikolai believes he's hiding out in a safe house in Azerbaijan. Price and his men head out to get him. This mission contrasts really well against the prior mission. Instead of the oranges and browns, we're treated to the cool blue night. The mission is quieter, at least at first. And instead of being heavily scripted, it's a bit more open-ended, with Soap searching through houses within the village for Al-Asad. This mission, although having high-intensity combat, is a bit of a breather, and it does well for the game's pacing. Once more, pacing and contrast are used masterfully. Eventually they find Al-Asad, and Price goes to work interrogating him. He asks where Al-Asad got the bomb. Al-Asad, as you can expect, is tight-lipped, but then his phone receives a call. Price listens for 1 second before he shoots Al-Asad in the head. He recognizes the voice.
Who was that, sir?
Zakhaev. Imran Zakhaev.
Price has a history with the man, and it all started back 15 years ago in Chernobyl. Price explains.
I was just a lieutenant back then, doing some wet work. Chernobyl, Christmas for the bad guys. Even a decade later, a lot of them still used it to get their hands on nuclear material. A lot of them, including one, Imran Zakhaev. It was the first time our government had authorized an assassination order since the Second World War. I was under the command of Captain Macmillan.
What I like about this cutscene is that it shows the remarkable consistency of Price as a character. Even 15 years ago, he was willing to assassinate a man. He's always been a guy able to wade into the darkness and do whatever it takes to stop a threat. The player takes then Lieutenant Price's shoes, and we set out with Captain Macmillan to assassinate Zakhaev. This mission, all ghillied up, is considered by many to be the best mission in the game. In fact, it's regarded as one of the best first-person shooter missions of all time. It's incredibly immersive, as you skulk through the desolate city with Macmillan. You sneak past enemies when you can, and take them out when you can. It's a very scripted mission. Any big deviations, such as running out into the open, lead to a quick death and a checkpoint restart. You can go off script slightly if you're fast enough to avoid the consequences.
Do you have a shot on the lookout? Bloody hell, the lookout's gonna see the body. Beautiful. Go.
People have grown a distaste for scripted missions, likely due to their overuse in games since 2007, and how they take agency away from the player. However, I think All Ghillied Up makes a strong case for how compelling these types of missions can be when they are constructed well. The most exhilarating part of this mission is when Price and Macmillan come across enemy soldiers in a field, and they have to avoid them. The enemies are right on top of you, and it's claustrophobic and tense. It serves as the prime example of how scripted set pieces enhance the experience. Another reason this mission works so well is because of pacing. The last mission was very open-ended and combat-heavy. This slow and scripted follow-up, as a result, feels like a great change of pace. Likewise, the following mission is action-heavy. All Ghillied Up knows exactly how long to last, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. Price and Macmillan ascend an abandoned complex, and Price commands a high-powered Barrett while Macmillan spots. Zakhaev is far off in the distance conducting a deal. Price has one chance to make the shot. This is tense. Price has to take the wind into effect, and even the Coriolis effect because he is so far away. He needs to wait for the right opportunity where Zakhaev is free and the wind is slow, while not waiting too long and letting him escape. Price takes the shot. Zakhaev goes down and his arm flies off. He's thought to be dead, but clearly that isn't the case. Through the shot, Price announces his and Macmillan's presence to their enemies. The quiet espionage of the prior mission gives way to an explosive escape as countless enemies converge on them. It's tense and frantic as a timer communicates their diminishing escape window. Things get even worse when Macmillan is injured by a crashing helicopter. Price has to balance carrying Macmillan while also fending off incoming enemies. This all culminates in one of the most high-intensity fights in the game, as Price and Macmillan fight off hordes of troops as they anxiously await exfil. This mission capitalizes on all the build-up from the prior mission, and once more the pacing is sublime. Eventually, friendly forces arrive, and Price and Macmillan exfiltrate. With that, Price's flashback ends. We return to the current day, with the SAS in a warehouse with Al-Asad's corpse. They have no time to contemplate further. Ultra-nationalist reinforcements have arrived on their doorstep, sent courtesy of Zakhaev. Price and company need to hold their ground against the offensive and survive. This mission doesn't have much in the way of build-up. It's high-octane as the SAS is pushed further and further back by the superior force of their enemies. They hold off their enemies at the farm, waiting for exfil. They receive bad news. Their helicopters have to land at the bottom of the hill, exactly where Price's team was pushed from. They have to knife back through the opposition as a timer ticks down. This makes for 2 high-intensity missions back-to-back. The increasing intensity of the gameplay coincides with the rising stakes of the narrative. Price's team manages to escape, and the SAS link up with the Marines. They now know the man responsible for these attacks, Zakhaev. The question is how to find him. There is one lead, Zakhaev's son Victor. They have a location on him, and since he is the commander of the ultranationalist forces, he'll know where Dad is. The SAS and Marines set up an ambush at a gas station, and they wait for Victor's convoy. Things don't go exactly to plan though, and Victor makes an escape. Soap and the joint forces chase him down, fighting through streets and eventually corner him at the top of an apartment complex. Before he can be interrogated, Victor takes his own fate into his hands. The mission appears to be a bust. Their only lead, the only one who knew where Imram Zakhaev would be, is dead. However, Price doesn't appear as downcast. Zakhaev won't take his son's death lying down. He'll emerge to answer the crime.
Oh, bloody hell. His son was our only lead, sir.
Forget it. I know the man. He won't let this go unanswered. Let's go.
Price is correct. Zakhaev emerges, capturing a missile site and giving an ultimatum to the US and British forces. They are to leave Russia immediately, or he will launch the nuclear warheads. Of course, the SAS and the Marines can't let that happen, so they head to the mountains where the site is located. One of the Marines, Sergeant Griggs, is captured, so Soap and his team rescue him. After that, they kill power to the missile facility by blowing up the power lines, enabling the other team to slip through the defenses of the facility. They continue their advance, fighting through enemy soldiers before things take a bad turn. Zakhaev launches one of the missiles. Its trajectory takes the warhead straight to the United States coastline, where it'll do untold damage, causing millions of casualties. The joint operations timetable has just been shortened. They need to abort the launch before the warheads hit. The enemy opposition significantly intensifies here, which matches the narrative climax. Despite the opposition, they manage to break into the missile launch bunker. They need to reach launch control, but it's on the other end of the bunker. Of course, there's what feels like an entire army camped out down here. This mission, No Fighting in the War Room, fires on all cylinders. The music is frenetic and intense. The countdown timer steadily ticks away on the upper corner of the screen. Enemy opposition is intense, and the close quarters fighting through the bunker is desperate and claustrophobic. So with all that in mind, this mission is designed perfectly to match the narrative climax. Soap and his allies abort the launch, and they receive confirmation that the warheads have been neutralized. But they can't celebrate quite yet. Zakhaev is making an escape, and Price isn't going to let him get away. They give chase, fighting against Zakhaev's still surmountable forces. The tables turn abruptly when an enemy Hind takes out the bridge we're traveling over.
Oh shit, he's about to take out that bridge! Stop the bloody truck! The bridge isn't gonna hold! Move, move, move!
The SAS and the Marines crawl out of the wreckage and fight against their enemies. Eventually, Soap is left injured and dazed, and his allies fall around him. When all seems lost, Price slides him a pistol. Soap puts the final bullet into Zakhaev along with his surrounding soldiers. With that, finally the threat is vanquished. Friendly Russian forces arrive. They perform CPR on Price while Soap is airlifted. As the screen fades to white, a news broadcast plays. The near calamity has been covered up, blamed on training exercises. And the search for the cargo ship at the beginning of the game has been called off. With this, we learn that neither Soap or Price or any of their allies will receive any accolades or affirmations for their heroic actions, despite their sacrifices, as are made plain by Soap and Price's injuries. However, from all the player has seen of Price, it is doubtful that he would prefer it any other way. He is a man that does the job that needs to be done, and that's all there is to it. The game leaves us wondering what will happen to Price and Soap, as well as wondering about the world stage as a whole. On this celebratory yet somber note, Modern Warfare ends. We see even in Modern Warfare's end, contrast plays a big role. The joy of victory is contrasted with the injuries of the men involved and the uncertainty of the world stage. Modern Warfare is a game that remains captivating many years after its release. It remains captivating even after many playthroughs, as I've discovered myself. Modern Warfare is a game crafted with unparalleled precision and intention. The pacing is perfect throughout its runtime, and the clever use of contrast makes every moment land with a weighty punch. It's not hard to see why Modern Warfare is listed as one of the best first-person shooter campaigns of all time, and I suspect it's a game that will continue to be talked about and analyzed for years to come. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking or subscribing, and if you want to support me even further, please consider reading and reviewing Apocalypse Bounty. I appreciate all of your support. Until next time.